snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hi guys! So I am here today to do cover chat, and this time we are going to be talking about Robin Hobb's Assassin's Apprentice, which is the first one in her Realm of the Elderlings series and the first one in the Farseer trilogy. Basically, Robin Hobb writes in this world, which is called the Elderlings Realm, and she does various different series and trilogies that all tie together within this world. Farseer is the first one chronologically, and then we have Live Ships after that, Tawny Man after that, Rainwild's next, and then Fitz and the Fool, which is her current ongoing series. This book follows the story of Fitz. Fitz is a bastard who lives at Buckkeep. He doesn't know his father, although he knows that his father was destined to be king before he abdicated, but they've never met each other, and Fitz was basically dropped off at the castle when he was very, very young by his grandfather on his mother's side, and no one really knows anything about him or anything about the first 6 years of his life, other than he was brought to Buckkeep and that's where he's raised. And we follow Fitz's story from when he's quite young up until when he grows into a teenager and he starts to learn the ways of the castle and Buckkeep. He starts to get taught by a man called Shade how to become an assassin, hence the name. It's very, very interesting as a story and as a series because there are lots of very cool things that Robin Hobb manages to weave into the story, such as skill magic, which is basically mental linking with other humans, and you can do all sorts of things with it, and also wit magic. And wit magic is basically a very similar idea, but instead of humans, it is animals that you can link with and bond with, and our main character has both of these powers. So, without spoiling anything, I will say that Robin Hobb is a phenomenal writer. She writes in a very detailed and very beautiful way, but it doesn't hinder the story. The story is still fun and exciting, and this is a fairly stereotypical story of a boy coming of age over this book and the next two, but there are some very, very cool, interesting elements that Robin Hobb brings into her story, which I hadn't seen elsewhere and I very much enjoyed. So, I ended up giving this one a 4 out of 5 stars. I really, really enjoyed it. In this episode of Cover Chat, what we're going to be doing is talking about the various different covers for Assassin's Apprentice from all over the world. This one, as you guys can probably see, the one I'm holding up is the UK original edition. This one was published way back in 1996, and the illustrations and design is by John Howe. John Howe is an amazing artist who I really, really love. I actually have his book here, which is illustrated versions of dragons, and he's really, really great at dragons, basically. They are his forte, just fantasy in general. He actually worked on some of the Hobbit films, and he's just an amazing, amazing artist. So yeah, this is his book. It's called Forging Dragons, just if you wanted to know. So I really, really love him as an illustrator, and I think he's amazing. And I think you can see that on these books because they all have a very, very beautiful image. As you guys can see, I'll put an actual full-size picture up of the image, but honestly, this is such a beautiful, beautiful design. It's a ship sort of rocking around in the waves, and as you guys can see, it's a little mass-market paperback size. So the things that I really enjoy about this one are the image on the front cover. I think that's done beautifully. I love the way that it's framed. As you guys can see, it's framed by this sort of very detailed, beautiful design, and we've got a little box that is specifically for the title. The typography stretches around that in a sort of arc, which I love. The gold foiling is very pretty, and we have all these little small boxes, which I'm sure you guys can see a little bit of, but probably not too close. Basically, each of these small boxes has a little character in them or a little image, depending on which book in the series it is, and they all relate to the story somehow, and I really, really think that John Howe is a fantastic designer, so these little additions make me so, so happy, and they're very, very cute. The one thing that I would say I don't really like is this white writing on the back, because I find it's a little hard to read at this point, but I don't really know what other colour they could have used, so it makes sense in the end. On the whole, I just think it's a really cute design. It's very, very pretty. I like the colour scheme of the blue, and I think it works really, really well. This one's probably one of my favourites of all of the Robin Hobb designs, which is why I'm collecting all of my books, as you guys can kind of see down here, in these editions, so I really, really like these. Moving on to some of the other editions from around the world, we're going to have a look at the Dutch cover. The Dutch cover, as you guys can see, is a pretty interesting take on the whole theme of a young boy who's learning to be an assassin. The Dutch one is a hardback. It is 352 pages. It was published in 2010 by D. Boerkij. I'm not sure how you say these publishers, but this one's a really interesting take on the same theme. I do not remember a really badass mage in the story, but that's what it looks like on the front cover. To me, this one looks more of a Wizard Academy type book. It reminds me a little bit of the Trudy Canavan covers. I like the colour scheme. I think the colours are very beautiful, and this big kind of globe in the centre, this globe of sort of slight purpley colour. I think it's nice. I think as a cover it works. I just am not sure how well it relates specifically to this series. I do like the colouring of the gold lettering only because of the four corners that they have done, otherwise it would be a little bit out of place. And this whole theme of circles seems to be an ongoing sort of theme. I'm again not really sure how that specifically relates to the story, but I think it's an interesting design. I think it's very beautiful, and I think if it was any other book I would probably buy it because of the cover design. I think it's very, very pretty. I just don't know how well it relates, so I would love to hear your thoughts on that one, guys. If you've ever seen it, or if you've only just seen it, then what are your thoughts on that one? Does it fit with the Farseer books, do you think? Or if you have a guess at which character they're trying to portray, then definitely let me know that as well. Would I buy that one? Probably, if I didn't know what the story was that it was related to. If it was just a book I saw on the shelf and it was in English, I would probably pick that one up. Okay, moving on to the Hungarian cover now. This one is also a hardback. It was published in 2007 and has 312 pages. It was published by Delta Vision. So this one is a pretty interesting cover. I do think this one relates a lot better to the story, because this one you can see a young boy and his wolf or dog on the front cover, and both of these things relate to the story. We also have this very, very, very beautiful sort of cliff face behind the boy with this little village on top and a castle, which I'm thinking is supposed to be Buckkeep. Buckkeep is where Fitz lives, and that would make sense to me that it was there because we know that it's quite near to the sea from the stories. It looks very, very pretty. The drawing and drawing style is very beautiful. I do like the sort of pastel tones that they're employing, and I think that the whole landscape looks very, very beautiful. There is a ship in the water, which could be one of the red ships. If you guys have read the story, you'll know what I mean, but they are essentially an enemy in the storyline, so that could be pretty cool. The only thing I don't really like about this cover, I think it would look nice as a print, but I think the typography being white doesn't work that well because it doesn't stand out enough from the sort of pastel colours behind it. If it was raised away, the Robin Hobb, for example, is actually cut out from a white banner, and I think if they'd done all the type in that way it would have worked, but maybe with a softer white than that one because it's quite bold, it's quite in your face, whereas if you wanted it to blend a little bit more into the background, you'd have a softer, paler white and a more translucent colour. So I think that would definitely be improved, but on the whole it's a decent cover, and I do like the artist who did it. I think they've done a very, very good job. I think it's a very nice cover. Would I buy it? Possibly. Depends if the typography put me off too much or not, but honestly the illustration is beautiful. Okay, next we are moving on to the Slovenian cover, and this one is actually a paperback. It was published in 2009 by Janovsta, and it has 484 pages. This one I actually think is really, really interesting because it's a very different approach to a lot of the other covers. This one actually has a buck on the front cover, which is relating to the story. As I keep telling you guys, he lives in Buckkeep, which does relate to bucks and deers and that sort of thing. Again, the illustration style for this one I actually really, really love. The image, I think it's very beautiful, very delicate, sort of soft tones, watercolour tones, and it works really, really well as an image. However, the typography on this one I absolutely dislike so much. They've got this purple banner going across the top and then this sort of black foil blocking that just does not show up from the purple banner very well, and this strange little tiny purple border at the top, which again I don't think really works and don't think really accentuates anything. It just draws your eye to the top and then there's nothing there. So I don't really see the point of those things. I think if they had just layered the text onto the sort of creamy green background like the Robin Hobb is, it would have worked better. And I think the use of the colour that they've done for Robin Hobb works a lot better as well, because it blends with the background but it still is bold enough to stand out and draw your attention, but it doesn't have this really heavy colour blocking everything off like the top banner does. So I don't really like that top banner. If that wasn't a part of the book and if all the title was in the same typeface as Robin Hobb, it would be a good cover and it would be decent, but because that is there, I really just feel like it's a bit disjointed from the top half to the bottom half, and so I probably wouldn't buy this one despite really liking the illustration style. I also think that although it's a really pretty image, I'm not sure if it really portrays the whole story that well or really draws you in enough. It doesn't look like a real fantasy book. It looks like a nice image and maybe a book about deers or something. So yeah, I think it's got a few issues. I do think it looks good as an image, but I don't think it looks good as a farcier Assassin's Apprentice book cover because it doesn't really say that to me. Moving on now to the Spanish edition. This one was published in 2014 by Plaza and Janes, and it is a paperback with 392 pages. So this one is again a very nice cover in terms of the illustration. I think whoever designed this is a very good drawer. They can clearly represent people, and this lovely sort of cityscape that's behind Fitz, I'm assuming it's Fitz on the horse, is really represented very nicely. I think that the city looks as though it's on fire, and that could definitely be a reference to the red ships and all the havoc and destruction that they bring to Buckkeep and just generally all the surrounding areas that are under Buckkeep's domain. I think that definitely does fit with the storyline. We have this kind of smoky hue that sort of cuts the bottom third in half, and then we've got the grassland and our main figure in the foreground. I am assuming that the main figure is Fitz on a horse, and behind him there seems to be lots of people. Maybe they are people who are forged. Forging is something that happens in the story. I'm not going to tell you anything about it, but basically it's bad. You don't want to be forged. So maybe they are forged people. That could be a reference to that. In terms of the typography, I think they've got the Robin Hobb just right. It stands out, it's bold, it's impactful, and it definitely draws your eye straight away. I think the type itself, the calligraphic style, is very pretty as well. I think it flows well, and the fact that the R and the H joined together is really, really nice. Nice touch. They've got the white at the top for the quote, and that has a drop shadow behind it, which seems to work very nicely. At the bottom, again, they've got a little white banner saying some more words. So again, that works. I think it says like the first one in the Farcia books or something like that. The only bit I don't like so much is the Aprendiz de Asino, because I think although it stands out in its own way, it doesn't stand out enough. I would like it to be more towards the white side of things, because I think then it would be all bold, whereas they've tried to make it recede into the background a bit by giving this goldy tint to it, and I don't really like that personally. But other than that, I think it's a nice cover. I do think it has relation to the story, which is great, and on the whole I think it's very beautiful. So yes, I would probably buy this if I saw it. I have no issue with this one really, just a slight moan about the type, which is usually what I moan about, so let's be honest. Now moving on to the German cover. This one is a paperback and it was published in 2009. It's got 621 pages and it was published by Hein or Hein, however you say that. They seem to do a lot of fantasy books in Germany, I have noticed from doing my cover chats. This one is a really different approach. It's a young sort of warrior man, I believe, standing with his face away from us, and we just see this billowing cloak coming from behind him. It's all red, it's quite silky and vibrant and maybe velvety in tone. It does look like quite a nice quality coat. We can also see his boots behind and his uniform. He's got a sword. So there's a lot going on in this picture, but actually I'm not sure how well it really does relate to the story, because I never imagined Fitz being like that. I never imagined him being this sort of burly henchman who has all these quality things about him, because he doesn't really start off that way. He definitely is depending on a lot of the charity from the people he's living with, which are his family, but he's a bastard, so he's not really part of the family. So he depends on their charity a lot, and I never imagined him looking that way just because he's a fairly young boy. I always imagined him a little bit scruffy and a little bit thin and things like that. Maybe in Germany this is how they imagine him. In terms of the typography, I think the type works. The Robin Hobb matches the background colour quite well, so those two are definitely echoes of each other, which is what I like to see. And I think the placement of Hein and Roman in the top and bottom seems to work again very well. So I think although it's not really an image I would have chosen to portray the main character, and it doesn't speak to me personally, as a whole image and as a whole book cover it does work. And I think the type does stand out well enough from it that you would actually be interested in picking it up, and you could read it from a distance and things like that. So I think the colour schemes are nice, and although the image is not the one I'd have chosen, it does work overall. I probably wouldn't buy it myself. As I say, the image is one that I really don't like, to be honest. It doesn't fit with how I imagine the story, but if I were to see it for the first time, I might think it was a decent cover, so I'm not entirely sure. Would I pick it up? Possibly, I'm not sure. Moving on to the Indonesian cover, these ones always make me laugh because they're always so different to how the western side of the world kind of views it. Indonesia have gone for an oriental cover. This one is a paperback, it has 532 pages. It was published in 2011 by Penerbat Matahati. I think that's how you say it. Pretty interesting approach to this. Good things. I like the Robin Hobb at the very top. I think that works well. It blends, it's easy to fit in, and it stands out well enough that you can still see it, even though it's a lot smaller than the writing at the bottom. The writing at the bottom at Assassin's Apprentice does work well. It's the same sort of writing that we saw on the John Howe cover, and I like that writing, so that works well for me. Also, it's yellow, which matches the sort of yellow globe at the top of the cover, so I think it works well. We've got this castle behind our main figure, and I'm assuming again that that is Buckkeep. We have this kind of fiery glow over everything, which again could be in reference to the red ship attacking, the Red Ship Wars. And in the front we have our main figure with a sword in front of his face. Very cool. Not quite how I imagine fits, I must say, but you know, I get the idea that they're going for, and we've got a wolf in the front as well, which definitely does relate to the story. So I think they've done a decent job with sort of correlating things from the story, but also changing it into an Indonesian feel, so it will appeal to an Indonesian market. I personally probably wouldn't pick it up because it looks very like actiony, dramatic, crazy sort of war to me, whereas it's really not that. It's a coming of age story, and this cover to me is like, rah, everything's going on, crazy stuff's happening, blah blah blah, look at me sort of thing, whereas I would like a more subtle approach. But I think it works well for the Indonesian market. I'm assuming that's why they've done it. It's a decent one. It's a decent one. Next we have the Hebrew cover. This one is a paperback as well. It was published in 1998 and has 512 pages and was published by Astrologer. We have a blue background, which is then overlaid with this border. We've got these swords that are in each of the corners, sort of crossed knives or swords, daggers, and we've got this sort of gold outline surrounding everything. Kind of reminds me of a Bible or something like that. We then have a crown on the front cover and a ship cut out with a kind of image showing through from behind it of this sort of beautiful landscape, quite scenic and idyllic. I don't really like this one, I must say. I just find the colours don't really work for me. I don't like the placement of everything. I feel like the knives are a bit unnecessary, and I feel like it's quite heavy-handed, as though someone just plopped everything on. They didn't really consider the placement of it all. I would be interested to hear your thoughts if you guys have anything to say about this one, because it's probably the one I least like so far. The sort of textured blue colour doesn't really work for me. The cutout of the ship looks very Viking and sort of bit peculiar to me. I just don't really think I get it. So yeah, I probably wouldn't buy that one, I'll be honest. Okay, now moving on to a US cover. This one was the original US cover. It's a mass market paperback, although I think you can get it in hardback as well. And this one came out in 1996. It's published by Spectra and has 435 pages. I don't know who actually designed this, but this one is, as you can see, very sort of classic fantasy. We've got the simple Robin Hobb type across the top in white, which definitely stands out a lot more than the actual title, which is Assassin's Apprentice. That one blends a lot more back into the background, because even though I assume it is foil blocked, it just doesn't show up well enough, and it seems like it's kind of a grey, greeny, sludgy colour, which is not the nicest colour. The illustration, we have the castle behind the two figures, which I think works really well because the castle is very beautifully drawn. And then we've got the figures, who I'm assuming are Fitz and his dog, and also maybe Shade, or maybe the Fool, I'm not sure. I think the landscape behind is very beautiful. I don't really like the figures. I feel like they kind of are a bit creepy. They're just staring straight out at you, and they're just straight on looking at you. It just kind of reminds me of like a weeping angel or something. It's a little bit creepy, a little bit fixed, like everything feels very rigid. All the folds of the silk or clothing that the main figure is wearing just look too perfect. Nothing looks rumpled or out of place. It doesn't look believable to me, and that's my biggest problem, is that it honestly does not look real. They look very drawn and they look very posed, which I don't like so much. So would I buy this one? Probably not. I don't like this as a cover. I think it's a bit ugly. I'm sure many of you guys probably have this cover, so I apologise if I have offended you by saying that. But yeah, this one is not my favourite, I must say. Next we're going to go on to the Jackie Morris cover, which was a UK cover. It was paperback and released in 2007, 480 pages, and was released by Harper Voyager. As I said, this is a cover that was designed by Jackie Morris. Jackie Morris actually designed a lot of the Robin Hobb books, and then she was actually called back to redesign them later on, which doesn't usually happen, so that was pretty cool. But this was one of her first attempts, and this one, as you guys can see, is a much simpler design than many of the others we've looked at. I actually have no issues or qualms with this at all. I think it's beautiful. The image of the buck in the centre is very, very beautiful. The whole of the design as well is kind of foil blocks, silvery. When you actually have it, it sort of shimmers a bit, which is lovely. And we've got the Robin Hobb typography, which looks very beautiful. It's the same typography, I think, that we have on the Farseer original book that I showed you, the one that I have, the John Howe one. It's a very similar type to that. Assassin's Apprentice is easy to see. It's at the bottom, it's clear, it's black, it stands out. You've got nothing going on that's going to distract you from that. Even the sort of rustic sort of wear that's on the background, it doesn't look out of place. It kind of makes it look more like a parchmenty thing. I just think it looks really beautiful. The whole style of it being centrally aligned and the whole design, the colour scheme of the sort of parchment colour mixed with the brown of the buck, they just look really beautiful together, and I think Jackie Morris is amazing the way she does things. So honestly, that's one of my favourites for sure. Would I buy it? Definitely. If I wasn't collecting the other edition that I just showed you guys, I would be collecting those because they're very, very beautiful. And from that we'll go straight on to the new UK editions, which are also designed by Jackie Morris. So this is the redesign. These ones were brought out in 2014 by Harper Voyager. It has 392 pages and it is a paperback. I think many of you guys will agree that she has again done a fantastic job with this one. It looks beautiful. It definitely has reference to the story again. We've got the buck in a little shield this time, and I think that looks really beautiful. All the heraldry on this really just makes it very beautiful, and it just works really well. I love the typography, the sort of calligraphic style. I think it's a lot nicer than the original that she did, which was just fairly plain sort of serif type. This one is much more calligraphic. We've got the massive A that is all beautifully inked. It just works so, so well. We've got Robin Hobb in this very sort of pale colour at the bottom, but you can still see it. It stands out well enough. The parchmenty colour in the background once again, but this time more like parchment than sort of foil blocking. The quote fits in really well with the whole design, so everything just looks really beautiful. I think it works as an overall design. I think it looks very stunning, and I would definitely buy this. Again, if I wasn't collecting the editions I already am, I would definitely buy them because I think they're very beautiful. And her version of the Fits and the Full series in this, I will be buying those because those are the only ones out. So yeah, I definitely love these and I think they're very, very gorgeous. So would I buy them? Yes. Moving on now to the new US designs. They're quite a different approach to the Jackie Morris UK one. This one is a mass market paperback. It was published in 2014 as well by Del Rey, and it has 435 pages. This one is very different. The style is completely different. The colour scheme is completely different. It's a lot more pops of colour. We've got sort of pastel gradiented colour in the background with a deer or buck in the background. I like that. I think the bird as well is quite cute. And I think the whole background, the sky and the clouds and stuff works well. I don't like the figure. I think the figure for me is really not good. I don't know what it is. Kind of because it's photographic, I guess. It just doesn't work that well for me. It's a combination of photographic and a little bit of digital editing maybe. I'm not sure exactly what it is. But the figure to me just doesn't look... I mean, he looks better than the German edition for sure. But the colour scheme is all a bit... It just doesn't work for me. It just draws my eye to too many different places. We've got the Robin Hobb in the turquoise colour, then we've got his cloak, and then we've got Assassin's Apprentice in the yellowish that doesn't really show up, especially the word assassin doesn't work very well. You can see that it just fades into some of the colours because they're too light, whereas Apprentice is all on black, darker colours, so that does actually show up fine. But yeah, I don't really like the placement of that. I would have probably moved it down or made it all darker so that it would show up more. I think the type for Robin Hobb works okay, and I think the type for Assassin's Apprentice looks okay. I just don't think the placement is good. I don't like the colour scheme. Would I buy this one? Probably not. I just don't like it really. Especially when you compare it to the UK one. The UK one is so much nicer in my opinion. So yeah, I just not a fan of that one, I must say. And finally, we will go on to the UK Clothbound edition. This one was actually designed by Claire Skeets, and this is a special edition. It's a hardcover clothbound edition that was bought out by Voyager Classics in 2013, and it has 472 pages. So this one I actually really like, and I think it's very beautiful, very classical. We've got the silhouette of a wolf howling, and we've got these sort of dashes that I assume are supposed to be rain or something like that. It just is really simplistic, and actually that works incredibly well. We've got the simple Robin Hobb that is a cutout from the wolf silhouette, so it's the same colour as the background. That's fine, it looks good. And we've also got the very simplistic sans serif type of Assassin's Apprentice, which is white, and that's the only white thing, so it stands out really well. But because it's contrasted on the black as opposed to the purple or lilac-y, it works better. If it was on the purple, it really wouldn't show up that well. It would be a bit horrible, but because it's cut out from the black, it looks very nice. It looks sleek. The design is very good. Simplicity is lovely, and I think it works as a cover. I would definitely buy that. If I were to be collecting sort of those editions, I would definitely buy it. I think it's very beautiful, and the fact that it's a sort of luxury cloth-bound item as well, it's just very stunning and a lovely addition. So I would definitely pick that one up were I to see it anywhere around, because I've not actually seen it anywhere, but I have seen the Magician's version, which is by the same illustrator, and that one was very pretty. So yeah, on the whole, I think that one is a lovely design, and I would pick it up. So those are all of the covers that I'm going to be talking about. I would love to hear your thoughts. If you guys have never seen some of these, let me know which ones were your favourite. If you own any of them, which ones do you own? And if there are any other editions I haven't mentioned that you guys know about, then definitely link me to them so I can see, because I would love to see them. Thank you all for watching. Let me know all of your thoughts down below, and I will talk to you all soon in another video. Bye!
Thank you for watching my video today. Go pick up a book, then come back and chat with me again.